and welcome everybody to another episode of Life from the Inside Out with Chris. And I'm super excited to be with all of you. And I've got myself and Serge here. Last time we talked about the gamma brainwave states and different brainwave patterns and how they are correlating to different trance states. And I know Chris has been talking a lot about the power of mindset and how to change our mindsets and how that creates our reality. So we'll see how we build on that. And I know we've had another couple questions from viewers, and I thank everybody for commenting and interacting. And we're gonna be weaving them into the episode. So
Cool. And I do like that some of our viewers are leaving questions. And again, I'm encouraging other viewers to do the very same thing. Just leave them in the comments for the video. And, we'll get around to them. We might not be able to get around to everybody, but hopefully we can weave them in at different times.
yeah, and just to let people know too, you might not hear the question repeated, but Chris has a way to kind of take that in and weave it into the material too. So you may just be kind of look out for that answer, and other ones will probably read. So yeah,
Cool. Okay, ready to go?
yeah, let's get going.
Well, we trust that you are comfortable.
Yes, thanks, Chris.
Indeed, and we thank you for your consideration and for the consideration of all of your other selves.
Thanks, you too, Chris.
So you are continuing the theme of brainwaves, which is very interesting in itself. As mentioned, your sciences have been able to record just so many brainwave patterns, and we have expressed that there are many others. There are variants of each one, of course. There are also many other kinds of brainwave patterns that function in the background, much like a radio receiver. A radio receiver may not pick up all the radio signals, only those it is attuned to. But that does not negate all of the radio signals available to the receiver. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
So there are hundreds, if not thousands, of different radio signals permeating the atmosphere, so to speak. But your receiver only is attuned to whichever one station you set it at. And on the same receiver, you are not able to pick up two signals simultaneously. It is one station only. But if you have two receivers, then you can tune them to different signals. If you have 4, 8, 16, and so on, each one can be attuned to a different station, if you like. So we suggest it this way because the mind, and then its physical representation, the brain, is in acknowledgement in some way to all of the various signals available to it. But it does not necessarily tune into them specifically because you have tuned your particular ego structure and your sense of awareness to the one station that you call your self. And the most common understanding of self is usually attributed to an interpretation of the ego. But self is more than the ego. The ego assembles a particular frequency or signal to represent an idealized version of you that deals with the physical environment, conditions, and circumstances according to the particular mindset that you entertain. So that would imply that your mindsets are multiple, but you are attuned to one particular kind of mindset. Does that make sense as well?
Mm-hmm.
It can be said, and we will use the expression in this way, there are shards of personality, literally occupying all of time space that you might understand. It does not mean that your personality is fractured or broken, but it means that your personality is globally, in that sense, is globally aware of the entire collective unconscious and more. But it is not attuned to all of it simultaneously. Even though you are multidimensional beings, you may not necessarily be attuned to the multidimensional nature of the self at any one time. Your physical system and its capacities have a certain limit. For instance, you would not survive holding a high voltage wire. But if you simply plug your lamp in the socket in the wall, you will definitely survive that because the amount of electricity has been reduced to your living capacities. So outside of that particular system, however, there's a much greater flux of information, of energy, and of different variables or variants of your own self. You are accustomed to calling them probable selves or other focuses or reincarnational selves. It is the same thing. There is not reincarnational selves, other focuses, and this and that. They are simply interpreted slightly differently, but they're all the same. In general terms, in quieting, a silencing of all the cacophony that goes on in the mind at any one time can broaden and widen your capacity to pick up other signals. So meditation, though sometimes said to have a purpose of quieting the mind, can do that. But it's not its only functions and abilities. It is a tool to calm the mind. And whilst you are in that particular hypnagogic or hypnotic or meditative state, same thing again, then you are more receptive to signals from other stations, if you like, or other shards of your whole self. And that can be very enriching. It can give you insights and knowledge that you did not know was available to you. It does not mean that after 5 minutes of meditation, you will now become an illuminated being and have all the knowledge of the universe at your metaphysical fingertips. And some people would like to think that's how it should work, though it does not. But it at least opens your mind to other possibilities and other means of gaining insight into your particular life. And the main purpose of that is to grow in wisdom so that you can recognize that which no longer fulfills you and then begin to implement skills, strategies that work towards your fulfillment. When meditators, for lack of any other word, claim that meditation will help bring an end to the cycle of birth and rebirth, there's a rather narrow, almost too black and white definition. Meditation can bring an end to the cycles of repeated behaviors that do not work for you any longer, that have passed their expiration date, if you like. So, in a way, it does end a certain cycle, but not in the dramatic sense of ending the cycle of birth and rebirth, but it ends certain behaviors if you allow this particular kind of system to work for you without chasing it, which is very important. Many people chase so-called truth. They run from one truth teacher to another, and realize after some time that they are still dealing with some of the very similar struggles that sent them on that journey. And the difficulty is that you are chasing too much. It is also a very good idea to let your answers and wisdom come to you. You do not necessarily catch the rabbit always by chasing the rabbit. You have a better chance of getting a rabbit by putting a carrot under a box with a stick and then pulling the stick so the box closes on the rabbit. So let the rabbit come to you. Let wisdom come to you, which means you have to be in a state of mind that actually allows wisdom and teachings a place to lay a foundation, to lay seeds and let those roots take place. But if your mind is always running hither and thither, never resting for a moment, you're going to have difficulties, because these seeds of wisdom need a little quiet to be able to get a word in edgewise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Chris, and appreciate the explanation. That really helps me understand the connection between some of the gamma brainwave states we talked about and then meditation, and how that, I love the analogy of the radio channels and sort of expanding the number of dials. The other dial I was thinking of was that it could potentially, one of those dials, be getting in touch with our inner state or our inner voice, or maybe even that kind of direct pathway to what we'd call inner self. Is that something else that we could see with
That
that
is the
quieting the mind?
main, this is the main reason you can consider the inner self, Grand Central Station, where
Mm.
all the trains come and then leave. It is the exchange central. So inner self is not one particularly set in concrete thing. It is not a done product. It is always in a state both of flux and evolution. And it never truly is the same from moment to moment. It is a nice idea to consider that self or inner self is a done deal, but it is misleading. Neither are you a done deal. If you were a done deal, you would not be here. You want, and this applies to anyone listening, you want various kinds of challenges against which you push your limitations and literally push them away, out of your way, so you can discover what else you are able to create. Being a done deal negates the idea of challenges and adventures. It says, well, there is nothing left to do now. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I'm. I guess I just have the image of like a river or like to just sort of recognize that movement of activity rather than something static when I'm thinking of
Indeed.
the inner
Indeed.
self.
Both the man in the river and the river itself are never the same from moment to moment.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to chew on that for a little while, Chris. That's there's there's a lot there. But yeah, to me it speaks a little bit to, if we look at some of the religious mindsets or something like that, this idea of this unchanging, God or something, that concept. That's really not the case. What's happening in that level is really something different.
It is another kind of experimentation, one that eventually leads to the realization that such an supernatural sky being truly does not exist in that sense of the word. And neither do the people who fixate on such ideas. The whole mindset involved in these kinds of actions is extremely rigid. Very, very little flexibility, unbending, and unwilling to bend. So the options for the majority, not all, but the majority, is that at some point they themselves will recognize they still need to continue to grow and expand as a personality. Now, most individuals in those situations would consider what we have just said as pure heresy. But then we have rarely ever considered ourselves anything but heretic.
Well, yeah, and the tip of my tongue too. We were talking a little bit about philosophers and what you were saying with the rabbit and uh, waiting and just kind of observing. Does it remind me a little bit of like the idea of the Tao or like Lao Tzu of like the that sort of their description of they called it the Tao at the time, and just sort of allowing that to move through us or to just watch and wait and
Indeed.
be patient and kind of.
Another way of looking at it is when the sun goes down at night, do you chase that sun? Or do you know, give it 8 or so hours, 10 hours, and again, the sun will be back. You do not have to chase the sun. You just wait for it to show up. And the same with the moon.
Well, that's true. Well, we've had some really interesting stuff, and I'm sure we'll build on that in the next episode. But do you have anything else for this one, Chris, or take our break?
For the moment, enjoy that ever renewed sun and explore the idea that you yourselves are never a done deal, but you're forever creating a new you on a daily basis.
One interesting thing is when the sun is down, it's not that the sun has gone away either. It's just outside of our viewpoint at that moment.
Indeed,
Yeah.
indeed. It has not disappeared. It has not been swallowed by some great beast. It most likely just needed a break. So, with that, we will return Joseph to you and enjoy yours.
All right. Thanks, Chris. We'll see you in the next episode.